microphone closer to you and turn it up.
In accordance with policy 3110, prepared a preliminary look at the budget for the 17-18 academic year. And what I'd like to do is review that with the board to go over it. I think before we start, I think one of the things that's going to color what we do with the budget is to note the state deficit, somewhere between 1.3 and 1.5 billion dollars. We have not received any notification from the state as to how this is going to be handled. So I think it's like, does everybody have a copy of my presentation?
No.
We ran out?
At least every more.
It's 100,000, of which we pay about 52%.
Okay, I'll start from the beginning. What I've done is we've just started analyzing some of the factors that will be impacting the budget for the 17 and 18 academic year. I think the first thing that we need to know is that this budget is going to be prepared in a climate where the state has a deficit of somewhere between 1.3 and 1.5 billion dollars. So we're not exactly sure how that will be addressed. It is addressed Friday at the Cape Caps convention. The government did mention it, but only obliquely, so that they're waiting for revenue estimates. I think one of the other things that's going to impact the budget is the apportionment. If you look at the Andover apportionment, and the Andover apportionment will decline, Hebron's will continue to decline, but Marlboro's will increase. So I think that that's something we're going to be looking at. We'll be looking at a decline in population in the middle school to about 466 students. The projections I've used here are NASDAQ projections, and I'll be refining them further with the principals. And then the high school enrollment will decline from 1,023 to 1,008. Again, these are preliminary estimates, and if you would recall, last year we had a number of students return from magnet and parochial schools, and so we need to do some research in that area. We have 5 retirements this year. One, Project Lead the Way in computer programming. I'll say something, technology education, a science educator, and a math educator. I'll say something about the first 2. We've been advertising, in some cases nationally, for Project Lead the Way without any success. We're having problems finding a candidate for that program. And then computer programming, we have a candidate, but we need to work through the certification. If you would recall the difficulty I had in the past certifying a French educator. Conversations with Hebron. Hebron wants to reduce 1 bus. I haven't done any calculations as to the number of students and to see if that's feasible from a Rham perspective. I will say this, that if the bus is reduced, it means that students will probably be walking further to bus stops, just because, so we're trying to cover the same area with 1 fewer bus. Grants. We're looking at the continued absence of a transportation grant, the possible reduction of the, further reduction of the excess cost grant. If you would recall, the excess cost grant is for special education costs for students whose tuition and transportation exceed approximately $55,000. Areas of increase. We're looking at salary increases, and these are negotiated increases for teachers and principals. And then during the budget process, I'm going to ask the board to set a salary increase for the non-certified folks, because we'll be negotiating with them in the spring. And then we're looking at increased legal expenses for the purposes of negotiation. Health insurance, we're looking, the consultant has projected currently a 10% increase in health insurance. And remember, this is a preliminary number, and this is always refined as we get closer to July 1st. On December 7th, there'll be a presentation in room 115 that we'll be talking about self-insurance and how that would impact the cost of insurance. So I would urge you all to be there for that presentation, because I think there'll be some decisions that will be required, and an understanding of the whole concept and how this will impact Rham.
What time? Room 113, but what time?
115,
1:15, and then what time is the presentation?
7 o'clock.
December 7th. It's December 7th, right?
Yes. We're looking at technology, continuing the one-to-one initiative for grades 11 and 12. We're also seeking funding for security audit of the network. And then lastly, to force software that we install on each of the machines that will force students to access the internet through the district website. Essentially a filter to prevent people from going to places where they shouldn't go. And then, excuse me.
You mean a proxy?
There's a software that it's worth about $2.50 a student that forces the student to go through the Rham server. And we're in the process of finalizing our estimates in that. There is the conversion to natural gas, savings would pay for the conversion, as we discussed earlier. The staff requests are due in September 28th, and we'll get a handle on where those are, and we'll be reviewing them with the staff members. We're currently projecting 2 more middle school positions to be reduced, so that'll give us a total reduction of 6.4 positions in 2 years. Capital budget, I'm going to recommend to the board that once the audit is finalized, that we project a surplus of about $140,000. We're going to ask that be put into a non-recurring capital fund to replace the ventilation in rooms 107, 128, 207, and 233. The cost is about $152,000, and we'll have about $140,000 once the 15-16 budget is audited. Capital expenses in the budget, I'll be looking for some direction in that, what amount that you want me to include. There are some things that we need to take a look at. The fire marshal has, after we finished the high school, he said, "You folks did a good job, now you need to do the middle school." So that's
You said the capital budget now is an external budget for
Oh,
separate.
that's one of the questions I'm asking that I need some guidance on. Will it be external, or will it be included in the budget? And I think that that's a decision that the board needs to make. Handicapped accessibility. At the end of last week, I received an email from the Department of Administrative Services telling me that we were not eligible for the grant, and this is after they sent me a grant award letter. I'd be happy to read to you, and I was very disappointed when I got that. I'm in the process of contacting them to find out what parameters are available, or what is available to us. Does the fact that they negated the grant impact the timeline? What other alternatives do we have for appeal? And then once I get that information, I plan on going further, talking to our legislators. But I need some information so that I can give them that information about the grant.
What agency is this?
Department of Administrative Services.
Denied the handicap accessibility grant because we're dealing with fields, not
It
physical
deals
structures.
with fields, not buildings.
Have you been working with our senator?
I want to find out, I want to get some information from DAS before I call her, because that way I can give her the total picture.
Can we not wait and get her involved right away?
Well, I called her 3 times today, and I'm hoping to get some sort of answer, but I will, eat them up the head and shoulders if I don't get an answer, but I,
I'm sorry, Bob, what was the amount of the grant again?
300,000.
And then-
And the
Did that
grant award
cover-
letter is dated May 26, 2016.
Did that cover everything we needed to
The
do? on-
board appropriated $80,000 for,
Our portion, whether the
for
grant was a portion.
the board's portion of it on the 60-40 split.
Yeah,
And so I don't know where that's going. And I'll be contacting the representatives. I'm going to give them one more day before I start making.
Bob, do we have a copy of the letter? Did it go out on Friday?
It's in your board packet.
It's for the meeting or for the Friday?
No, it's in the meeting agenda.
if that's a 60/40
Yes,
split.
Let me answer one at a time. If you look
Yeah,
at
it's like 8.4.
communication 8.4,
That's the Gmail.
it's in the agenda packet.
It's just, is that the official response?
That's the official response.
It's email?
I called Costa, Diamatis, I'm not sure the pronunciation of his name, and asked for some clarification. Called him a couple times today. I got his voicemail.
So you have a grant award letter. What was the agency that gave the grant award?
DAS,
DAS, and then you get an email
from DAS,
from DAS that says, sorry, but
sorry, but
that's insane. I would encourage all of you to contact our representatives on this.
So the 300K was for the grant, if that's a 60/40 split, we owe about 200?
no, the board's portion was about 80,000.
Yeah, so where was the other coming from, existing
The
budget?
state. See, 300 from the state, 80 from the local.
Yeah, but that's not a 60/40 split.
It's, I forget what the exact percentage is.
Okay, I just want to understand what our total exposure is.
Total
If we don't get it,
It's
it's
380,000.
380, okay.
And we have 80 budgeted already.
It has the potential to be more than that, because we could lose ECS funding too.
I don't really get anything from the state, period.
I know.
I mean, they got their own problem, and we're not an inner city either, so we're kind of on the edge on it.
I'm very concerned about the time getting outside. I want to talk to these people. And I share their concern about the possible impact on ECS or any of the federal grants. But I want to find out if that timeline has been changed because of this. Because remember, this came from a State Department of Ed audit and recommendation.
And the softball field, Bob? That's the new thing.
The reason I mentioned the softball field is some things discussed earlier this evening. The town of Hebron wants to do the field over at Veterans Park, and we would have to do something to create a softball field so there would be equal opportunity for the girls to play softball. The glass installation, I think that we've discussed that this evening. And then the current capital priorities from the Director of Facilities would be as follows. The fire stops at the middle school, improved cameras in both the high school and middle school, and sidewalk and loading dock repairs. The loading dock is falling apart, so we need to do something about that. And then just to take care of some of the cracking, et cetera, that's in the high school. And then we received a communication from Hebron Parks and Rec, asking to upgrade the irrigation on 316 fields, to add a booster pump, to add irrigation to the middle school field, and to increase the electricity to some of the fields. So that's the way we see the budget preliminarily. And once I receive the request from the departments, we'll have an idea what that bottom line will look like. And we'll be presenting that to the board probably as we did last year, at the end of January, beginning of February. So that we're hoping to have the total budget so that you can examine it and then go from there.
Can we ask questions?
Yeah.
I have 3 questions. The bus, if we reduce one bus, wouldn't that make the bus rides longer?
I'm sorry,
I'm sorry. If we reduced a bus would that make the bus rides
In
longer?
some instances, it would, because remember, we're gonna have to pick up all the kids, and you're gonna have one less bus to do it. And so that potentially has the impact of lengthening the bus ride, or having kids walk further to bus stops.
Do we know,
Because that's one of the other alternatives.
do we know, like how, because there's been a good reduction in the amount of students in Hebron, do we know how long the amount of buses that's presently in place has been in place?
I'd have to go back and do some research.
Yeah,
If
no, I
I-
wouldn't
If I
think we'd
recall,
know
there was,
that.
about 2 years ago, I think there was a bus that was reduced too.
Okay.
We use the same amount of buses as the elementary school,
Yes,
but the buses don't follow the same routes.
they don't because it depends on where the kids live. And-
Right, but I mean, for example, my street, the elementary school goes down, so it's a good long street, whereas the high school bus stops at the street.
And I think there's going to be more of that. And one of the things that I find especially distressing is that we have to provide a seat for every student,
Yeah.
though we know they're not using it.
What would the savings be at the town of Hebron by reducing one bus?
I think it's about 14,000, I'd have to double check, I'm not 100% on what the savings would be.
Yeah.
I want to find out the numbers of kids to be transported to work before I do anything.
I know in the town of Andover, there are no bus stops, everybody gets picked up because we don't have sidewalks. So,
I mean,
yeah, you still have.
How many student
we
parking
reduced the bus
spaces?
in Andover this year. I thought it was interesting, we had to work with the bus company to try to move the bus stop back because there was bear on the bus route.
That's good consideration, it's good because, how many student parking spaces are utilized nowadays?
Let's say it again,
How many students are parking on campus roughly on a given day? Roughly 500?
Oh, no. It's close to like 230, 250.
And most of them can't carpool, right? So unless
Right,
it's a sibling,
exactly,
in
yeah.
some unique situations, but for the most part.
And remember, it's the state with the driving laws has restricted the way kids come to school. Somebody has it, I got my license, my next door neighbor got his license. Back in the day, we would drive together, you drive one day, I drive the other day. Now the law says you have to drive alone, so that creates a.
Six
So I
months.
understand.
It's 6 months, and then you can drive siblings, and then a year before you can drive non-family.
I have two more things.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Can I piggyback on your bus one? though?
Sure.
Because the more I'm thinking about it, the less clear I am. So is it that Hebron, because of their population, wants to reduce one bus stop, so that would also,
If you
Impact
look at
Rham.
the document that I gave you this evening,
yeah.
look at page 3. I think this is important to take a look at. You can see the change in average daily membership in the district. These are October 1st numbers supplied by the Department of Education. It's this sheet right here. And what they do is you can see the percentage of change where the this is the wrong sheet. I will send you the corrected sheet. I'm sorry, I looked at this and the wrong sheet was placed in here. Take that sheet up, I'm sorry. I think that their per pupil expenditures and per pupil expenditures are tight. I think an interesting one here is the expenditures by revenue source. And it's interesting to note that Marlboro gets 23% of its revenues from the state, and where the other towns, Hebron and Andover, get significantly more. I will send out a revised sheet on the enrollment.
All right, yep, my second question is, not question, just statement, I would be in favor of having two separate budgets this year, one capital, one for the operations. And then my third question, this is a question, do we have an update from the town on the softball field and ETA? Is it happening this year?
I need to sit with them and talk about it. I need to make you aware of it. I know they said that they would work with us. I don't know how far off that is.
Okay.
Do we know what the cost is?
Do we have an idea what the cost is to make a field?
Well, they're gonna be working on their field. I know what their cost is. I need to figure out where we're gonna put ours and what our cost is.
Order of magnitude, a guess, pie in the sky,
Well,
100,000, 200,000?
I can tell you that, to create a field behind a maintenance shed was about 400,000, and that was back then.
That was a soccer and a softball field.
And, yeah, it was a soccer and softball field, and that was about 400,000. I know that that's not gonna be totally possible now because of the location of the maintenance building. We're looking at a couple other locations to put the field in.
Dan, I have the answer. Last time I asked Rich Clarko, which was at one of our meetings, last meeting he presented, it was July, so next July,
2008.
17th is when they're gonna start.
I wanna double check that, but there haven't been any changes since our last discussion.
Remind us who Region 19 is, the districts in Region
Yes,
19.
ma'am.
That's what we were saying, yeah, okay.
Dan, you have a question? Bob, who is reducing the bus? You say Hebron. Who is Hebron?
Yeah.
The Hebron Board of Ed will reduce the bus.
Oh.
And what I'm afraid of is that if we reduce a bus, we might end up having to pay for a full bus. I'll try to work with the company to retain a half bus. One of the things that I'm taking a look at, and before I make a recommendation, is, as you will recall, most of the buses leave here 3/4 empty in the afternoon. And they come in empty in the morning, so is that a wise decision? And those are the parameters that I'm going to be using when I look at it.
Bob, when does our next series of bonds expire?
I'm sorry?
When are our next series of bonds paid?
2021.
Do we have a policy on how far they have to walk and how long they can run beyond
Well,
the bus?
I think it's really a matter of safety, because if you look at any of the towns, it's a question of, the routes they're walking and what's the best place to aggregate the students. Because we've had in the past, before the resource officer, we've had people out looking at bus stops to make a determination whether this was a safe pickup or not. So we're very sensitive to that.
There's no state ruling on it, because, I mean, for the magnets, there are kids who come in over an hour, hour and a half on the bus, to come to some of the magnets.
I understand it's a mile walk,
Oh, yeah?
mile walk to the bus stop.
Now, I think that goes by town. I think that goes by town, because I know in Hartford, some of the kids can walk up to a mile and a half at an old school age. Yeah.
Tina, you have one last question. Bob, do you want to talk about the surveying, since we're talking about the softball field, what's been done with the
Well,
fields?
we've surveyed for the handicap accessibility, and I received an email saying that they couldn't give me a rule of thumb to talk about the surveying of that, and I need to work further with those things.
They couldn't give you anything for the...
What I asked for is if we were gonna survey a field, 10 acres, what would be a rule of thumb that we could use to say, look, it would approximately cost to survey the field is this.